this is a fan base that when you win, they rally behind you, as you know, and there's none better.
Troy, I appreciate you doing this. Thanks so much for the time. And listen, bear with me because I want to have a little positivity with what we're going to do today. There's so many people who live here in North Texas who have no idea what it's like when the Cowboys are winning championships. It's been that long, 30 years, but you were right in the thick of it with your teams. So if you would, could you paint the picture for me of what it was like around town when you and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith and all your guys were doing what you did, winning those championships?
Yeah, Joe, it was a magical time, and it really kind of began in 1991. It had been so long since the Cowboys had done anything really, hadn't had much success in the postseason, hadn't made very many postseason games for 15 or so years. And then in 1991, we got on a little run and finished 11-5, made the postseason, and that's when it really started to begin. And we realized this whole idea of America's team and all these Cowboys fans. Until then, we hadn't really experienced it because we hadn't been a very good football team the 2 years prior to that with Jimmy Johnson and then, of course, with Jerry as the owner. And then 92, when we went on our run and won the Super Bowl, it was a time in all of our lives that when you go through something like that for the first time, you just can't ever really recapture it. And the fans, to see them rally around us was phenomenal. And I think, Joe, for the most part now, this team has enjoyed a lot of regular season success, so they really haven't quite been able to get embraced the way that we did because we were so bad in the regular season as well. But this is a fan base that when you win, they rally behind you, as you know, and there's none better.
It is interesting, man. I can't wait. I want it to happen. I want to be able to cover it. I wasn't around when you guys were doing all that winning. And like you said, I know it just had to be a magical time. All
Yeah.
right, so let's talk about what's at hand now. Jerry Jones makes the decision. He chooses Brian Schottenheimer to be his head coach. A, do you like the pick? And B, do you think the relationships that he's forged with the players on that team can help create a winning culture with the Cowboys?
Yeah, I've known Brian a long time. I've always thought he's a good football coach. I've always had great respect for him. He's a good person. He obviously comes from a football family. Whenever I'm around him, he's got great energy. I think he's smart, all those things. So he checks a lot of the boxes. And I understand the fan base is a little frustrated. They're a little down the fact that he wasn't being interviewed by any other teams that had opened vacancies at the head coaching position. And but everyone kind of wants to win the headlines right after they announce somebody. And for the most part, you would say that Chicago won the headlines by being able to get Ben Johnson, but none of that really matters now, Joe. It's really a matter of once we get into September, do they win? And if they win, nobody's going to remember anything about the hiring process. So I wouldn't put a lot of weight into whatever is being said or whatever is being written. He's going to be judged just like every other head coach in this league as to whether or not he wins. And will he be able to do that? That's a big question. And you don't know until you do it. I've said many times, this job, it has a lot of obstacles that you've got to be able to overcome, and everyone understands that. But he does seemingly have the support of the locker room, both offensively and defensively. I think the fact that there were so many players in attendance at his press conference really says it all. Those players wouldn't show up unless they were in support of him being hired. So there is some continuity. I think that's a positive thing. And time will tell as to whether or not he's going to be effective and be able to do his job.
Schottenheimer's father, the late great Marty Schottenheimer, he had Marty ball. It was tough. It was
Yeah.
physical. It was run centric, and we see now that Schottenheimer went out and he got Clayton Adams from Arizona, who likes to run the football. What can running the ball effectively do in terms of creating the right identity for the Cowboys?
Well, I mean, you're talking to the right guy when it comes to that, Joe, as you know. I mean, I had the best seat in the house handing the ball to Emmitt Smith, the all-time leading rusher, and what that meant to our teams. Now, we threw the ball as well as anybody as well. We just didn't throw it as often. But we were balanced. And I think when you look at the great offensive teams in the league today, that's what they are. They're balanced and they can come at you in a lot of different ways. And that's Brian's background, as you said. His dad, Marty Ball, was about pounding the football. You think of his teams in Kansas City and in Cleveland and the way in which they played, and they won a lot of football games doing it that way. And there's a lot of teams right now that are going back to running the football, and they're having a lot of success also. And I think it creates a toughness. It's a mentality that really permeates throughout your entire building. I think it's hard to create a toughness and a physicalness to your football team if you're not a running team. If you don't really rely on the big guys up front and just beat opponents into submission. So I anticipate that'll be a big part of what they're going to do. All indications are that. I know that when Brian was the offensive coordinator in Seattle, Pete Carroll, a big believer in being able to run the football. That's what they did with him as the offensive coordinator. Marshawn Lynch and other running backs that they had there. I would anticipate that we're going to see a heavy dose of the run game come September.
Troy, this next question comes with a wink because we all know no one can tell Jerry Jones what to do and how to do it. But what could Jerry Jones do in terms of the way he interacts with Cowboys players and with Schottenheimer to create the best environment possible for winning football?
Well, I do think, Jerry is, I mean, obviously he's an advocate for his football team, and I don't want to say cheerleader. I think that takes on a negative connotation, but I think he's a very positive influence, quite honestly, in the building, in the locker room. I think it's out there publicly where at times Jerry wants to be the face of the organization, and sometimes that contradicts with what the head coach is trying to accomplish, or at least it has at times over the years. So I think the messaging has to be singular, if you will. It's good if it's only coming from one voice, but with Jerry and his availability to the media, whether it's after games or on radio shows during the week, sometimes the voice isn't in alignment with whatever is coming from the head coach. And I do believe that when you look at the teams that have had great success, and the one that comes to mind is the one who's playing in the Super Bowl this week, and that obviously is the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid is the voice of that franchise. Dan Campbell is the voice of the Detroit Lions. Kyle Shanahan is the voice of the San Francisco 49ers. And Nick Sirianni is the voice of the Philadelphia Eagles. And I could go on and on. Everyone knows that at the end of the day, the owner of all 32 of these teams is the ultimate decision maker. Nobody disputes that in any one of these NFL cities. But if you hire a head coach to do a job and you entrust him to run your football team, then I think you've got to let him do his job and let him be the voice of the organization. And so that's my 2 cents. I know that when we had success under Jimmy Johnson, he was the voice of our organization. He was the one who all players knew they had to answer to. We felt that he was the one who was making all of the decisions when it came to our employment, whether or not we were going to stay on the team or whether or not he was going to get rid of us. And I think that's a positive. I think that's a good thing. And I think players need to understand that the head coach is in charge.
Troy, I think that's incredibly well said. And you got to know your 2 cents is a lot more valuable than most, my friend. That is fantastic stuff, I got to tell you. One other thing about Jerry and kind of the brand of the Cowboys and the Cowboys star, if you will. As a businessman, Jerry Jones is beyond reproach. I mean, he turned $140 million investment into $10 billion. It's remarkable stuff. But we know that the brand is also paramount. And I'm curious, from where you're sitting now and where you were before, because it's so valuable now, and there seems to be a preoccupation with the brand, do you think that can get in the way of winning on the field?
A little bit. I will tell you this. You're right. I don't know of a better businessman personally than Jerry Jones and what he's done, not only for the valuation of the Dallas Cowboys, but what he's done for the popularity of the NFL, what he's done in terms of TV contracts and the game as we know it today. Jerry Jones obviously has a big footprint on that. But I also understand that as proud as he should be and is, that the Cowboys are the most valuable franchise in the world, regardless of sport. that would mean a lot to me if I were in his shoes. But the fans, they just want to win. They really don't. They don't care about whatever the valuation is of the organization. They just want to see Super Bowls. They want to see championships. They want to rally around their team, and so I understand the fan base's frustration as well. And so, does it get in the way? Possibly. I do know that what the Cowboys what they have goes beyond what we see on game day. You know, there's a lot of legs to this Cowboys organization, as you well know, and they've made it extremely profitable. And at times, could that drive in order to be profitable or maximize profits, can it at times take away from the production on the football field? Yeah, I think it's probably fair to say, yeah, that could happen. I think anyone within the Jones family would probably say, yeah, they've got to really mind their business to not allow that to happen. Has it in the past? Possibly. But like I say, I just don't think you can go 30 years without making it to an NFC championship game, forget Super Bowls, and not force yourself to take a real hard look as to why are we not having more success in the postseason when we get there. It cannot be, oh, well, let's just simply get another head coach. And that's what I keep going back to, whether it's me running a beer business or a car dealership or anything else in life. Everything starts at the top. And when things are going well, the top gets credit. And when things aren't going so well, then people point their fingers at the top then as well, as they should. But you just can't go this long and have this kind of drought and have it just simply be the head coach and the coaching staff. There's got to be more to it.
And listen, I do think that there has been at least some statements publicly made, especially Stephen Jones lately, saying that there has to be some sort of change because you can't keep doing the same
Yeah.
thing. You just can't keep doing it over and over. All right, I do have a question about the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, a slight favorite over the Eagles. Troy, who you got?
Man, I'm hoping for a good game, and the last time these two teams played, it was. I will tell you, I don't know how you bet against Patrick Mahomes, especially this year. I mean, it's of all their teams that have made it to the Super Bowl, this is probably, I don't know how to say it, but probably the least impressive of all of them. You know, they're not as dominant offensively as we've seen in other years. They weren't last year either, but yet they in one score games they win. They haven't lost any of them. So there's a lot of this idea that if we can just get Kansas City to the fourth quarter with a chance to win, we're in a good position. Well, Kansas City, they believe they're in a good position, and they have been all year long. So I believe you're a champion till proven otherwise. I would have to go with Kansas City, but I do think Philadelphia, if you look at them on paper, and it's not played on paper, but I do think Philadelphia is the better team. But who's going to play the best come Sunday evening?
All about that quarterback, the great equalizer. Speaking of quarterbacks, what does a former quarterback who is now a broadcaster do when you don't have any games to broadcast? What are you going to do in the off season? What's it look like for you now, Troy?
Well, I'm sporting my team colors today.
I see it.
Got the 8 beer, and yeah, I'm back in the grind on that. The season takes a lot out of me, but now I've got some time off, and I can refocus on 8 Elite Light beer, and I'm really excited about it. We got big plans for 2025, and excited about that. So I'll still get away and find some time to relax, but that'll be taking up the bulk of my time selling some of this beer.
Well, good luck with that, man. You know, we cheer for you when you're in the booth, when you're in the boardroom, wherever it is. We're always cheering for you, Troy. Thanks so much for the time. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Joe.